Was it the voice? Was it the fire burning in me? All of the noise turned into choirs of harmony. Left me with the pieces of forever that you broke. But since you left me alone, I've been high.
Hello friends, welcome back to another week of meals video where I like to share with you the easy and realistic meals that I make for my family throughout the week. These meals are great for busy weeknights and they can be done on just about any budget. Thank you so much for watching today, and if you are new here and could use some meal inspiration, go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button. I am switching things up a little bit today and starting with dessert because why not? I am starting off by making some chocolate chip pumpkin bars. These are something that I might have made on my channel before because they are probably one of my family's absolute favorites. I have made these for years. Since my oldest two were really little, I have made these. And it's funny because they have a lot of pumpkin in them, but we are not like pumpkin people. So we hardly ever will go for like the pumpkin spice coffees or pumpkin spice treats really at all. So it is funny that these are one of our absolute favorites, and we've kind of become known for these as well. I often will bring them for Thanksgiving. We have a family baking day that we do annually, and a lot of times we will make these. This is my daughter's favorite dessert, so I like making this throughout the fall and throughout the winter. Really all of the cooler months I enjoy making this. I will have the recipe from today's video posted down below if you're wanting to try any of these, but I usually start off by creaming together the butter that I softened and a cup of sugar. I'll cream that together, I'll add an egg and then 2 teaspoons of vanilla. I'll mix that together and then I'll add in, the recipe says 1 cup of canned pumpkin. However, you know me, I'm so great at following directions. I usually add more than that. I would say I probably use like 3/4 of the can of pumpkin in this, and then I'll stir that together, and then I will add in the dry ingredients, 2 cups of flour. There is pumpkin pie spice, and I don't always add that in. It kind of just depends on how much pumpkin we're wanting. So I did not add pumpkin pie spice to this batch, but you can definitely do that. Then a teaspoon of baking soda. And after you kind of combine all that, you'll add in 1.5 cups, however many chocolate chips you'd like. I know in my house we do not measure chocolate chips. It's, you know, it's like cheese. Who's measuring chocolate chips and cheese? Because we are not in our house. So, you know, measure with your heart with stuff like that. So I usually use about half a bag of semi-sweet chocolate chips in this recipe, and it's just something, you know, if my daughter's making it, she probably adds a little more. She loves her chocolate, so she probably adds in closer to an entire bag, and that gets really chocolatey, but I would say about half a bag of semi-sweet chocolate chips is really a perfect amount for this recipe. Once you have the batter prepared, then you will pour it into a generously greased 9x13 pan, and I usually have my oven preheated for 350 degrees. The original recipe had it lower, and I'm not really sure why, because mine cooks perfectly each time at 350 degrees. So And that takes about 30 minutes or until the center is set, and you can put a toothpick or a knife in it and it comes out clean. Another reason why I decided to share this recipe in today's video was because I know that school is starting and things tend to get very hectic. Our kids are homeschooled, but even for homeschool families, it gets very hectic, and having like snacks like this is perfect to have beforehand. We can cut these up into small little squares. If your kids go to school, you can put these in their lunchbox. They make great after school snacks, just special treats and stuff to open their lunchbox and have something like this from home. I know my kids, when they were in public school, they loved stuff like that. So I wanted to share this, even though it is a dessert, and I'm trying more so recently, like this week, my focus was on super quick but affordable back to school type of meals, things that can be made just on a really quick busy weeknight. And even for us, that is something that is really important right now as we get back into the swing of things. But this dessert is one of those things. You can make this ahead of time and cut it up into small squares and have it throughout the week for your kids for whatever they need. As you can see, the batter is kind of thicker. It's like a thin cookie dough batter, but you just spread it very evenly as best you can, and this is how it turns out. You could, of course, eat it just like this. You could put a glaze on it, however you want to do it. I am doing just a sprinkle of powdered sugar because that's how my kids enjoy it, but it definitely is good without this as well. Now that we have dessert all done, I am going to start off with this. It's called spicy Alfredo pasta, but it was not spicy at all, so don't let that name fool you. I have some water boiling for the pasta noodles. This also was originally supposed to be like a ravioli lasagna type of thing, but as I stated before, I am absolutely terrible at following instructions and recipes, so I completely forgot to get the raviolis. So you could use cheese raviolis in this recipe, but it was delicious and it really wasn't missing anything. So if you just have regular noodles, I'm using bow tie. That works great as well. I have a pot of water boiling, so I'm going to pour in the entire package of the bow tie pasta, and I have some, I believe it was just mild Italian sausage cooking. I put it in this pot because I'm hoping to put all of the pasta in this pot once this is all cooked and ready to be put together. The Italian sausage is all cooked, so I'm going to remove it, put it on a paper towel so I can go ahead and start making the sauce for this whole dish. In a second, I'm going to show you the bottom. Well, you can kind of see it there. The bottom of my pot. I was like horrified whenever I took out the sausage and the bottom of my pot was like that. And I'm like, you know what? We're just gonna. It said to use like the grease and stuff from the sausage to make the sauce, and mine just had turned black at the bottom of the pot. I guess I had it too high or something. It ended up turning out great, and I was able to get the bottom of this pot completely clean, so I'm not worried about it. But I saw this and I'm like, I was slightly horrified. I was just like, oh my gosh, I hope this comes clean. I hope I didn't ruin my pot, and thankfully I did not. So anyway, I put in a stick of butter and I was just melting it down and trying to get the flavor out from the bottom of the pot. I put in some garlic. The recipe has, I think it's heavy cream. I did not have that. I used whole milk and that worked just perfectly. And then I added in some Italian seasoning, some salt and pepper, and you let it just slowly simmer and get nice and creamy and thickened before you'll add in any of the cheeses or other ingredients. I ended up getting a little impatient, so after a couple of minutes of it simmering, I went ahead and added in the Parmesan cheese, and I added an Italian mixture cheese. So the recipe calls for mozzarella, but I had this Italian mixture, so I just wanted to use that, and I used, I think, a good amount, probably more than I usually do, but you know, I love following directions and wanted to really stick to it. I think the recipe was for like 2 cups, possibly even 3, and I probably thought that was too excessive. I don't have it in front of me, but I will post this recipe down below. This was a delicious recipe. Like, I already have it to make on my list for this coming week. It was super easy, and also because I think it probably would have been more expensive if I bought raviolis for it, but I just did bow-tie pasta instead, and that was a cheaper option, obviously, compared to the raviolis. So it is a very, very budget-friendly recipe as well. While the sauce was cooking, I drained the noodles and I put the Italian sausage in with the noodles, and I'm going to now put that whole mixture in with the sauce, mix it together, and I will be putting it into a casserole dish and kind of baking it, getting it nice and bubbly, but you won't see me putting it into that dish because these pans are so hot. So I did it off camera because it was just, you cannot get a good angle with it being so insanely hot. And I think this is where the spiciness comes from in the name. You will just sprinkle some red pepper flakes on top, and you can you don't even have to do this if you're not wanting it, but I didn't measure, so I don't even know exactly how much I did, but it wasn't a lot. It might seem like a lot to some, but it was not spicy at all. And then I topped it with some more of the Italian cheese, and I put it in the oven for not very long. I just let the cheese kind of start browning on top, and when it was nice and bubbly and the cheese was nice and browned on top, then I pulled it out. Overall, this dish was very, very budget friendly. It was really easy to come together, and this is something that I'm going to be adding into our fall rotation. It was delicious. I don't even think we had leftovers after this. You know me, I like to try to make extra so we can have leftovers for lunch the next day, or so my husband can bring to work, and this was just, it was so good that I don't even think there was any leftovers at all. For this next meal, it is seriously so simple that it will take hardly any time to even explain, but this is CrockPot French onion meatballs. You can, of course, make your own meatballs if you would like, but I am taking it a step further. We got frozen meatballs. Actually, we already had these in the freezer. I had previously bought them I think a couple weeks ago for a different recipe, and they just never got made. So I am making that tonight, and this was insanely simple. It really doesn't get more easier than this. So anyway, I am chopping up 1 medium-sized onion. I did the first half of it kind of smaller chunks, and then I did the second half a little bit larger. So I'm going to pour in the entire bag of just home-style meatballs, and then I'm going to top them with the onions, and I'll make sure it's kind of evenly dispersed in there. Then I will put in 2 cans of French onion soup, and then this onion soup mix. So I think that comes a couple in a box. You'll just put 1 of the packages into your meatballs. I just poured it over top. I do like to put a little bit extra liquid in to my CrockPot meals, especially, I don't know, I'm such a saucy person. My whole family is, except for my daughter, and so I tend to usually put a little bit extra sauce of some kind. I know last time I made these, I put some beef broth in, about a cup or a half a cup. This, I just filled one of the cans from the French onion soup. I filled it with water, poured it over top, and then put the lid on. I'm going to put this on low for 6 hours. It didn't even take that long, but this is how it turned out. I ended up making just some butter noodles, and I topped them with a little bit of parsley, and I think I put some garlic into the noodles and just some sauce from the meatballs cooking. It was incredibly delicious. This recipe is not as pretty as I was hoping it would be, but this is, and I also didn't make it right. So these are supposed to be sausage pancake bites, and I'm including them because they are such a wonderful thing to have on hand. Now that your kids are starting school, you can have these in the fridge and then just warm them up really quick. These were a huge hit, even though I did not make them correctly. So I'm starting off by browning a pound of breakfast sausage, and then I'm going to help Theo make pancakes, and you can use any kind of batter that you're wanting to. I just used our normal one, and I'll put the recipe down below so you can have it if you're wanting to try ours. But he wanted to make the pancakes, and he's just making our normal batter. So where mine went wrong was I don't have one of the silicone muffin pans, and I knew that if I used a cupcake pan that it would just be a nightmare to clean. And if you have ever cleaned a muffin pan, you know what I'm talking about. It is just, you can use, it doesn't matter, you can use as much grease and stuff as you possibly want. They are terrible to clean and terrible to get out, and I've kind of just given up on the whole muffin thing because of that. If I have like liners, then that obviously is a lot easier, but it was just not the case this day. So that is kind of where I went wrong with these. And they were still, I mean, the taste was there. They were wonderful. They tasted like pancakes with sausage. And then as you saw, I then poured syrup over top. So the only difference is you will make your pancake batter, you'll make your sausage, and then once the sausage is cooled down, you'll then stir it into the batter. That is another mistake I made, is I put the sausage on top of the batter and then I baked it. And a little bit of a backstory was I was sitting there discussing it with my husband, but we thought that the pancakes would rise too high and overflow the pans that I was using. So instead, I went ahead and I just did a thin layer of the pancakes, and then I put some of the sausage over top, and I did not, put more of the pancakes because I didn't want it overflowing. So lesson learned is, one, I need to just get a silicone tray or muffin pan, whatever they're called, and that would be significantly easier. But if you don't have that and you're doing it my way, just mix the sausage into the pancake batter and then pour the batter onto the pan. Now the first pan I did, it was a pretty thin layer of pancake batter and it did not rise very much, so that is why you'll see one is super thin, and then we did a really small pan with a lot thicker batter, and that rose beautifully, and they were nice and fluffy, and how I would imagine the muffins to actually taste. So I highly suggest using like a thicker pan. This is just like a cookie sheet. So if I used this instead of like the muffin pan, I would definitely do like a 9x13 with taller sides, and then just do all the batter mixed in with the sausage. And so learn from me, but yeah, do it that way, and it is seriously delicious. They were just like pancakes and sausage, and like I said, it makes for a really easy breakfast on the go. So, or if you have your grandkids coming over, that makes for something really nice to have in the fridge. You can just pull out in the morning and they can dip them into some syrup, and there is just like a pancake breakfast, but already ready to go for you. I think this is another time where it's like a really good lesson learned type of situation. Yes, these were not exactly how I intended them to be, but they were still just as good. It was all about the taste, and the thinner pancakes, they were not crunchy or anything. They were still, light and fluffy like a pancake, but they were just like a thinner pancake. And I think there's so many times where we get set on how something should be or how we were expecting it to be, and then it not being like that and kind of being disappointing in a way. And I'm just here to tell you it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be a disappointment. These were delicious. My kids still ate them completely, even though it was not how I expected them to be. And now I know, how to do it differently. I can do them differently next time, and they will still be delicious, and my kids will still eat them. We were at a family member's house recently, and I had given her the wrong recipe for some potato recipe, and anyway, I did not realize it at the time, and she made these potatoes expecting something different, and I think was kind of disappointed that they did not turn out how she was expecting them to be. They were still absolutely delicious. She did a wonderful job, and everybody enjoyed them, but I think, like I said, there's so many times where you kind of get caught up in that disappointment of expecting something to be one way and it not being exactly that, and that's okay. Just serve them anyway. That's kind of the beauty of cooking, is kind of just figuring out your own way of doing things and coming up with new things, new suggestions, and kind of twisting things to make it your own. And if you're not failing, sometimes you're not going to find ways of doing things that better suit you and your family. Here is how the second batch turned out. So there was a lot more of the batter in this, and personally I like this better because you can see they were significantly more fluffy and more of what I was going for with the muffins. So if you have a silicone muffin pan, that is absolutely the way to go. We are moving on to our very last meal of the video, and this is CrockPot Mississippi chicken. Now, if you saw my last video on Wednesday, I did include this, so it will be a little bit repetitive, but this is a wonderful meal if you are really crunched for time. This is a great meal to have during the week on one of those busy weeknights after school. This can cook while you're at work. It's just one of those meals, and it's really budget friendly. This can be made a bunch of different ways. I know the original one that I had seen was a Mississippi pot roast, and pot roast is a little bit more expensive than chicken breast. So I have never tried the chicken breast, so I wanted to give that a try, and I had some on hand, so it ended up working out. I used 4 chicken breasts for my family of 6. 3 of them were a pretty decent size. They weren't huge or anything, but they were they were a good size. And then one of them was a lot smaller. And like I said, that allowed for some leftovers for our family, and everybody really enjoyed it. So it made a good amount for our family of 6. I had someone point out in my last video for this recipe that I did not include the butter, and I just completely forgot when I was filming this that I needed to add the butter. So that is why you won't see it. However, you can do, I think I did 6 tablespoons of butter, and I just kind of put them over top before I put the lid on the crock pot. You could do a half of a cup too, which is 1 stick of butter. You can do that over the top, and just like I said, do it on the top and then put the lid on. So on top of, you'll put the onions at the bottom of the crock pot, and then you'll put the chicken over top, and then over top of the chicken you're going to do 1 package of ranch seasoning, and then 1 package of au jus seasoning. And it's a half a cup of the peppercini juice. I like a little bit more than that. So, and it does add a little bit of a kick. So if you don't like that, maybe do like some broth of some kind. But I, again, am a saucy person and I like a little bit more sauce to my meals. So I added a little bit of, probably about 1/4 to a half cup of chicken broth that I had in the fridge. And then I added a little bit more of the peppercini juice and about 1/4 cup of the actual pepperoncinis. My family actually likes eating the pepperoncinis when this is all done. We like eating it with, the meat that we have cooking. So that works out. If your family doesn't, then I think you can leave those out. Or you just leave them whole. I know there are some people that will do like the slices of them, but if you or your family does not love the pepperoncinis, I would just leave them whole if you're wanting to put them in here, and that way they can just easily pick them out and not have to deal with them at all. I cooked this on low for about 5 to 6 hours, and then I came up to see if it was done and could be shredded, and it is. So that is what I am doing here. And I just served this with some mashed potatoes and some steamed green beans. This, of course, can also be done on sandwiches, which is really good. We've done that before. But that is all I have for you today. This is how dinner turned out, and that was our week. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.